998, 999, 1000. Oh, hi everyone, it's your boy McAvoy, and welcome to tonight's video podcast for Edexcel GCSE PE. And in today's session, we're going to be looking at sports psychology, and we're going to be looking specifically at classification of skills, guidance and feedback on performance, and we're going to look at those in a lot of detail. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this up into three main areas: types of skill that you need to know for your exam, different types of guidance that coaches use to help performers, how they give feedback on improving performance, and the different ways that coaches can set up practice and drills for their sessions. So everything that we look at today is all about improving performance of a performer in the eyes of a coach. So we can link all of the different skills together, we can guide the performer, give them feedback, and we can improve them through different types of practice and training. So you might want to divide your notes up into three sections and make notes as we go along. Underline anything that's underlined, make sure you make a note of it, and make sure that you pause and rewind the video if you need to go back and have a little look. Okay. So first thing we're going to look at are the different classifications of skills. For your exam, you will need to be able to categorise different skills in sport. And we can categorise them into two sections: open skills and closed skills. And you can see them as being on a continuum of open skills to closed skills. Now, an open skill is classed as a situation where the environment is constantly changing. And when we talk about the environment, we're not talking about the weather, although that's a contributing factor. We're talking about the surface, the wind, the rain, the pressure from other performers, the difficulty of the skill. So open skills are constantly impacted by the environment. So if we look at this as an example here of a footballer dribbling the ball, he's going to be affected by defenders trying to tackle him, the bobble of the ball on the surface, maybe some of the wind, or maybe the sun's in his eyes. This is a very open skill, dribbling the ball, and you're constantly having to adapt. Closed skills are skills that take place where the environment is generally quite stable and it doesn't change very much, and it doesn't really affect the skill. So if we think about a set shot or a free throw in basketball, if the basketball is throwing the ball, there's no pressure on him from opponents trying to push him out the way. There's no sort of environmental factors from the weather or the surface. It's very closed. He's repeating the skill. He's not under any sort of undue pressure to adapt the skill. It's a very closed skill. The same could be said about doing a handstand on a beam. So the beam's just going to be the beam all the time, and the skill will be replicated the same all the time. Now, what we can say is, we don't just say skills are open and closed, we can actually move them along the continuum. So there can be some skills that are in the middle. So for example, a high jumper, yes, running and jumping, that doesn't change. It might obviously change to different heights, but that could be affected by the weather, or it could be affected by the pressure of the crowd. But generally we have open skills affected by the environment, closed or not. If I was you, I would go through the slide and decide which ones are open and which ones are closed, and justify your answer. We can also categorise skills into basic or simple skills and complex skills. Basic skills require basic technique and easy to perform. Complex skills require more technique and more concentration. So if we look at, for example, a set shot, quite a basic skill: knees bent, elbows flexed, pushing the ball, following through the hands. It's a simple skill repeated over and over again, quite simple to do. If we look at maybe a high jump, it's a complex skill because it involves a run-up, it involves a takeoff, it involves the flight, and also involves the landing. So it's built of a lot of different parts and it's very complex. So again, go through these and decide which you think are basic and which are complex skills. So that's how we classify skills in 4 different ways, and the final 2 ways we classify them are low organisation skills and high organisation skills. So with the low organisation skill, it only has very little parts or sections to it, and it's easy, it's hard to break those down to different phases. But if we look again at maybe the set shot, it's got really simple phases about holding the ball, bending the knees, shoot and follow through. But then we have high organisation skills that have lots of different phases and steps to it and are more difficult. So we're thinking about a layup in basketball involves a run-up, a take-off and a shot at the end. High jump, run-up, take-off, flight, landing. They are high organisation skills. You've got a lot more parts to them. Okay? So again, go through that, decide which are low and which are high organisation skills. Okay, so now we're going to look at what we call practice structures. Now we know what different types of skills are. As a coach, it's important that you think about what the best way to improve those skills is. And we do it through practices. You may have heard the word drills or training sessions, but we're going to look at practice structures. And you would learn different skills in different ways. And we're going to look at the different ways coaches train their athletes on different skills. The first one's called massed practice. This is where you practice a skill without taking a break. So if we think about maybe passing in netball, you might just continually pass the ball to a partner and just keep passing the ball until you feel secure in that technique. There's no breaks, it's just repetition. And through that repetition, you become more fluent at that technique or skill. Advantages, it gives you lots of practice. Disadvantages, it can sometimes get a bit boring and you can get fatigued quite quickly, which will affect your performance. We also have distributed practice. Similar thing again, but in this we have breaks and we might learn the skill over several sessions. So if we're learning a chest pass in netball, we might learn it in week 1 for 5 minutes, then in week 2 another 5 minutes, week 3 another 5 minutes, and we've got breaks in between. Advantages of that is that we get to rest and recover. We get time to sort of secure and consolidate those skills in our heads. Disadvantages, it can take a long time to become secure in these basic skills. So these are 2 types of practice structures that you might want to use. Okay, so we also have, if my slide works, fixed practice and variable practice. Fixed practice is when you practice until you've perfected that skill. So for example, a tennis player might keep serving the ball over and over again until they get it secure. Variable practice might be doing the same skill but learning it in different ways. So in this example here, we're learning to pass and receive the ball continuously, and then we've made the practice a little bit different where it's a game but they're still working on passing. So that's an example of variable practice. So they are all different ways that coaches would practice. So if we have a little look at these images here, we've got the 4 types of practice. Have a little think about which of those is which type of practice. Just spend a little minute or so just having a look at that. Okay, so they're the different ways that we classify skills, the different ways that we practice and improve skills. Now we're going to look at what we call guidance, and these are the ways that coaches help performers to improve. And you can see some examples at the bottom. The first one is through visual guidance. So this is showing the performer how to perform the skill or how to improve. You can do that by demonstrating, or you can do that by showing video. So visual guidance. Then we've got verbal guidance, where you would explain the skill to somebody, like in this picture here. You would give feedback on the performance and tell them how to improve. That's verbal. And the final one is what we call manual or mechanical guidance, and this is making contact with the performer to improve the skill. So in this example here, this is what we would call manual guidance, where you're supporting the performer through the movement. And then we have mechanical guidance, is where you would use a piece of equipment to support the movement. For example, using a harness or a jack in trampoline on gymnastics, where you jump up and down. So there are different types of guidance. Now these have advantages and disadvantages. Visual advantage, it shows them what it looks like. Disadvantage, whilst I'm showing the skill, they can't really ask me questions about why I did what I did, so that's a disadvantage. Verbal advantage, you can explain something in lots of detail like I'm doing now. Disadvantage, it can be difficult to understand if you're not able to communicate concisely to the performer, and it can lead to confusion. Advantages of mechanical and manual, it allows the performer to feel a movement, so the gymnast can feel what a handstand feels like. Disadvantages, not always possible to do that. If you were learning, say, something like a layup, it's sometimes very difficult to move the performer through that movement with a piece of equipment. Okay? So get to know the different types of guidance and the advantages and disadvantages of each. Now we're going to look at feedback. Feedback is anything that improves performance, really important for performers and coaches. The first type is called intrinsic feedback. This is where the performer reflects and evaluates their own performance in their own head and tells themselves how to improve. So for example, Johnny Wilkinson kicking a ball, he'll be telling himself about what he needs to do to kick the ball accurately. This is really good because if you're an advanced performer and you've got good knowledge of the sport, you're able to improve yourself. If you're a novice and you don't know how to kick the ball, it's hard to give yourself feedback. So there are advantages and disadvantages. Then we've got extrinsic feedback, is where it comes from an outside source, maybe a teammate or a coach, it's where they tell you how to improve. Advantages, you can get to the point really quickly and get the point across. Disadvantages, it can sometimes be overwhelming or can be confusing if the message is the wrong message. And you would use this mainly for beginners or novices, people who make mistakes. And then we also have concurrent feedback, is where you would give feedback during performance. So maybe during a handstand or maybe on the side of the pitch during a game. And then we have terminal feedback, is where you would give feedback at the end of a practice or a half time or at the end of a game, like in this instance here. And the advantages of this is it allows you to be clear about the overall performance and give feedback. Disadvantages, you've got to wait sometimes before you can improve performance. Advantage of concurrent, if you can give feedback instantly. Disadvantage is that you can end up giving too much information throughout the performance, leading to confusion. Okay, so I've talked about a lot today, so let me just summarise what we need to know for our exam. You need to know the different types of skill, and you can see those here. You need to know different ways that coaches guide performers to improve their performance. And you also need to know the different types of feedback that coaches give to their performers and when they give it. And you also need to know the different ways that coaches can help performers practice and improve their skills. Make sure you go back through the video podcast, make sure you bring your notes to the next lesson, go back over anything you're a little bit confused about,